Hello and welcome to week 4. This finishes up our first month of design. So this week, I'm going to start talking about some of the specific activities that I use, particularly in Act 1, as well as still talk about some principles of design. As we get into weeks 5 and 6, I'll continue on through what I usually cover in a pretty traditional foundational workshop, talking about each specific activity, as well as maybe a few more so that you can begin to really see how I do this work. And you can choose if you want to do it like me, not like me. Remember, take what you like, leave the rest. So this week's videos, using IGO, individual, group, and organization as a conceptual framework. It's a little bit a longer video, but I really talk a lot about needing to use trifocals, seeing everyone as individuals deserving of respect, but that most organizations, most people really do not get the group level. Privilege, marginalization, the dynamics of microaggressions, how those dynamics then play out in the culture and the climate, which begins to move into the organizational level. So it's really a solid foundational frame and model that I use as I design and as I facilitate. So I want you all to get that pretty early. I'm then going to talk about welcoming and framing in more details. We did cover it a bit in the 3 acts of a play, but I go into more details and show you some of the slides that I use. I'm really excited about warm-up activities and icebreakers. I am, when I'm live, such an experiential person. And so, or even in the videos that you'll see, the webinars that you'll get to watch this week. They're designed to really show you how to do those experiential activities. So warm-up, icebreakers, love them. Hope you find some you want to add to your toolkit. Learning guidelines, I go into a little more detail. And what you'll see is I don't do them early. I do them after a few learning activities so that people get a feel for how we're going to engage. And then I think it's a more meaningful conversation as opposed to a check. I then talk about consider the English proficiency of participants and share with you how I used to not pay attention and just some key principles and points and ways that I redesigned knowing beforehand, but you can also redesign in the moment if people show up and you're like, there's not much English proficiency around writing with some folk. It just be a handful or 1 or 2 folks, and I might change an activity. And then finally, a little longer video looking at quotes, graphics, metaphors, statistics, visualizations, different ways to engage people. And just one after another, I talk about ways I do it and show you some of my slides. So be sure to print off the workshop handout. Now, it's a new handout. We haven't had that before. You've got the design handout that we're going to still be working through. This is many of the handouts that I use today in my full-day workshops. Not all of them, but most of them. And it is called Foundational Workshops on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Print that off. We're going to be referencing throughout actually the next 5 months of the work. And then you may have seen these webinars before. In 2018, I did them in June and July. You have access to both of those. I'd like you for this week, week 4, to watch the part 1, Foundations, Equity, Inclusion Training. In it, you'll see about the first 4 hours of what I do in a foundational workshop. Now, I say that, but the truth is I move things around and I plan differently. I'm planning a workshop for this week. I have faculty in 2 different days on microaggressions, creating an inclusive classroom. And I looked at what I did someplace else a few months ago, and I'm like, I want to do this, not this. Again, given the context, the needs assessment, who's coming, I shift. But I want to show you basically the scaffolding of what I generally do, or at least think about. Some of those activities are in Appendix E, so if you haven't really looked at that lesson plan yet, I think it's a really good resource. And there'll be some new activities, and those is what I'll be covering in some of the video clips as we get into weeks 5 and 6. Then, what I want you to do is over the next couple weeks, I want you to be thinking about how could you apply these principles to what we're doing. And I want you to be watching the second webinar in week 5, I'll assign that. But to really be thinking about all the different ways that I use and scaffold, all the principles, concepts, take those and apply it to the workshop you're developing brand new or you're revising so that you're applying them every week. And then please send me your questions in the Q&A. Again, we'll do them either live in our 2 calls coming up here each month, and or I'll respond in the comment section. My hope is, especially throughout this first month, but especially with week 4, you begin to see a lot of these concepts in action as you watch the webinar, as you see me teaching in these videos. You begin to see that I'm practicing some, if not most, of the concepts that I'm teaching. All right. I hope you're enjoying the videos. I'll see you in the next one.